Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. The continuous development of technology, evolving ransomware, the deep web and cryptocurrencies, cybercrime, as well as hacking has necessitated a comprehensive legal and policy framework that can proactively provide for protections. So the ultimate goal is to have systems and structures in place to ensure and enable a growth and innovation, especially in the digital economy. Today's discussion will focus on how we can go about shaping Sri Lanka's digital future. To have this discourse in a comprehensive manner, we've invited to our studios two professionals, Dr. Rasika Dayaratna. He is a senior lecturer at the School of Computing at the University of Colombo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Also joining us is Professor Gihan Dias, Department of Computer Science and Engineering from the University of Moratuwa. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening, Sonali.
My first question I'll direct to Professor Gihan Dias. We have seen that across the world, the digital landscape has developed in leaps and bounds. So has the protection system. However, in Sri Lanka, regulation of the policy landscape of cybersecurity can be said to be at a nascent stage. Although we have legislation such as the most recent Personal Data Protection Act of last year, the Computer Crime Act, Electronic Transactions Act, the RTI, Intellectual Property Act, among other statutes. However, these days we're deliberating as a society over the cybersecurity draft bill. Speak to us about how important it is to have regulation, statutory regulation in this respect.
Yes, that's a very good question, Sonali. So the important thing is that our lives are moving day to day into the digital era. So gone are the days where we wrote letters on piece of paper and put a stamp on it and put it into a post box. Everything goes online. No bank now sends statements by post. Everything comes online. We don't write checks or go to the bank and withdraw money. We send money electronically. We deal with the government. If you want a passport, we can apply for the passport electronically. So everything is moving to the digital realm. And just like the physical realm, there are people who are trying to take advantage of it for their own purposes and make money or do something else and do some criminal activity or defraud someone or try to do something. So we need to make sure that the digital realm is just as secure, in fact even more secure than what we have today as a physical thing. So let's look at the physical thing, right? Now, can I walk anywhere in the country without any problem? Usually, yes. But of course, if I do some stupid thing like, go to some not so good part of the city in the middle of the night and, wearing gold chains and Rolex watches and so on, I think, there's a chance that somebody will rob me. Similarly, on the cyber space, if we are using it, we should not leave avenues for criminals to attack us. So we should take necessary precautions that we are safe. So I think that is the basic thing. If we are going into this digital world, we must learn to be safe in the digital world, both individually, as companies, as government organization, and as a nation.
Fantastic. Dr. Rasika, your perspectives on this new draft bill, the cybersecurity bill, which envisages the creation of a cybersecurity regulatory authority, which would comprise of wide-ranging powers. Speak to us about the salient features of this bill.
Yes, this bill contains many duties and creates a apex body also. but main thing is these bodies protect the critical infrastructure of the country. So as we know that as a citizen we need essential services, and the government is other government and other organizations provide that services. And with the digital things, like a lot of things would have would be delivered through the cyber world or in the cyber world. So we need to protect the critical information assets in the cyber world to smooth delivery of these functions of the country. So this body is created mainly to identify these critical infrastructure in the country and protect this infrastructure. That is the main thing. And apart from that, there are so many other things, but I think that the main point is that to identify the critical infrastructure and protect those critical infrastructure in the country.
Professor Gihan, policy consistency has to be maintained with the primary objective of ensuring that the people's best interests are protected. In the past, we've seen the manner in which legislation has sometimes been used to weaponize the people. However, we have to ensure that the Cybersecurity Act, once enacted, ensures that systems and structures work in the best interests of the people whilst ensuring data protection and cyber security. How must the state go about doing this?
Right. So any act, right, can be misused. I mean, we have seen examples of that not only in this country but in many other countries where various legislation and various government institutes are misused for various things. However, having said that, I think what we should focus on is how can we use this act, how can we use this authority and any other bodies which are set up underneath that to ensure the security of the country, our organizations, our private organizations, government organizations, and also I believe to do that we have to also set a certain limit on what not only this authority but any other bodies can do. So certainly if any of these authorities or bodies or whatever are used to infringe on the freedoms of the citizens, I believe it is our duty as citizens to make that known and work together to make sure that this does not happen. However, at the same time, it is very important that remember that security is for all of us. So if this authority does not work, it does not do its job and does not create the necessary security, all of us will feel the pain. So for example, if you go to your bank and suddenly find that you thought you had 1 lakh in your account and now it says your balance is 0. And everybody says, oh well, you know, there is no security, maybe something has happened. You know, you do not want that to happen, right? So it is very important to realize that this Cybersecurity Act, the Cybersecurity Authority are there to protect us both as citizens as well as institutions, and it is up to us to make sure that that happens. So the authority has a board, a chairman, a director general, staff, and so we need to make sure, and an advisory committee. So we need to make sure that all of these actually serve us, the citizens of the country, as opposed to maybe somebody else.
All right. Dr. Rasika, when we speak of enhancing the digital space, we initially need to have the conversation of educating ourselves. User responsibility has to be paramount. So before we unleash laws and regulations, people need to equip themselves with the education of how to behave and act on these platforms, what are the risks and dangers and harms across these platforms. I feel like that need is not being satisfied by the authorities, by the regulatory agencies. What's your take on that?
Yes, Yeah, I agree with you. And but like we see that European Union, and they have a legislation called General Data Protection Regulation. So their approach is like one side that the citizens are there, but they as a country or the countries in the European Union, they have taken measures to protect the rights of the individuals. So that is why they have this data protection directive regulation. And so likewise that we have given the mandate to the government, so it is the duty of the government also to protect the people and citizens, and the citizens also have to learn that and appropriately use the technology. So it is a both side we need in this equation.
Professor Gihan, what's your take on this disconnect between citizens exercising their rights and not knowing about their responsibilities? What do you have to say about that?
Okay, so first of all, I would say I think there's not a huge disconnect between the government and the citizens, at least in this area. So the government also knows that security is very important, and it is important for the citizens. Now the other way I would say might be less. So many of us use the ICT, we use our phone, we use our whatever devices without thinking of security. So I'll give you a good example. You post a message on Facebook saying I am going on holiday tomorrow and I won't be back for a week, right? And also on Facebook you have given your home address with a picture and everything. Now that is basically invitation to anybody who is interested in coming and robbing your home to come and rob your home, because they know you are not going to be there, right? And they know the date you are coming back. And if you have a picture of the home and maybe some of the nice things you have at home, they know exactly what they can come and rob, right? So as a citizen, we should be careful what we do. For example, if you have e-banking, online banking system, don't give the password to a friend, because if you give a password to the friend, maybe you trust that friend, but on the other hand maybe he uses that to withdraw some money. So don't do that, right? So maybe you can find a different way. So I think it is very important that our citizens do know what is should they do and what they should not do with regard to security. So I'd like to also mention about one of our initiatives. We have an initiative called Hitavati. Hitavati means your friend, your confidant, and of course we specifically said Hitavati to say it is female, because we want people to feel there is a person, especially females and children and young girls, to feel that there is a confidant who they can work with and get some information. So if you go to our website hitavati.lk, there is a huge amount of information on how to be safe on the internet, right? And we have a phone number, we have WhatsApp, Facebook, TikTok, all those things. So if you are interested in being safe, or if you have a cybersecurity issue and you want to get some help, I would recommend you come to Hitavati.
So this is an initiative by the University of Moratuwa?
Not really. This is an initiative by the LK Domain Registry, and we've been running it for more than 5 years now.
Right.
And it's actually, I would say, a very useful thing for people, for especially individuals, and specifically we are also targeting females, but it's really open to anybody to be safe on the internet.
Dr. Rasika, do you think that Sri Lankans, in terms of digital literacy, are geared to navigate through these developments in the digital space? What more needs to be done?
Yes, I add something to the Professor Gihan mentioned that. So other thing is common sense is very important. And like a digital literacy is important, and we'll come to that later. But other thing is common sense. So you have to know the common sense. And as he mentioned in his example, I have seen so many times that don't tell neighbors that if you are not at home, but you post it on Facebook. Right, so because you don't tell it to neighbors, because you won't you don't want anyone to know that you are not here, and to protect the house. But you post it on Facebook, so then everyone knows that you are not at home. So that is one thing. Important thing is common sense. And other thing is when you are that is also discussed in other countries and not very much in Sri Lanka. That is called human aspect of cybersecurity. And when you are developing a technology, whatever the technology, you have to think about the humans and how we behave. And it has said that people don't want to have a drastic change in their behaviors. So they behave in a particular way. So it is also said that when you are developing the technology, you have to consider that fact also. So now it is also widely discussed, and there are some courses also on human aspect of cybersecurity. And when it comes to your question, the Sri Lankans digital literacy, but my understanding is we have considerable, like number wise, it is digital literacy is high, and it is among the young people also it is very high. The issue is that one thing, a lack of common sense, and other is like knowledge of cyber world. And like digital literacy is one thing, and the cyber security is cyber safety is another thing. And then you have to know that how to set the password, and basically you have to think that what to publish and what not to publish, and with whom you want to share your information.
Yeah. But so that is the important. At the moment, is there a central agency that provides training programs, for example, or a central authority which, for example, if you take the education sector, are teachers equipped with the knowledge and the know-how to tell that to their students?
Actually, in that respect, I think that students are much better than teachers. It is a very, like some students are really good, but I think it is there we have a very good students and very good people, but it is like throughout the country I think we are not at a satisfactory level.
Yeah. So what needs to be done?
And one thing is the education, and also education is the very important thing, awareness thing. And there are so many organizations. There is no single organization. There are many organizations are conducting training programs, awareness things. But it is all like this problem is not only in Sri Lanka, but in all the other countries we can see that problem in India, Singapore, USA, UK, and everywhere. But I think at the moment we see a lot of problems, but in the future we will get a serious problems. That's what I think. I think that's why I think this kind of act is also needed, because still our digitization is not that much. Like most of the critical services are not heavily dependent on IT. But when we develop in further, that most of the things will be depends on the IT. So that is why we want to like a protection there. And from the citizen side, and still I think I don't know the statistics, but the digital banking, other things is probably not a very high level. But when people go into more digital services, we really need that. And still we don't see very much serious crimes kind of thing in Sri Lanka. We have certain things, but compared to other countries we don't have. But the reason is some hackers or criminals think that, or it is said that they think that it is that our system is so small and country so small, like capacity wise. So that is why I said that in the future it would be a serious problem, and we have to get ready for the future challenges.
Professor Gihan, I was recently having a conversation on artificial intelligence and how Sri Lanka should sort of progress in that sector. And something that came up during the conversation on a previous episode of the same program was that Sri Lankans have this aversion of fear of the unknown, fear of technology, fear of change, and how that sort of connects with our government agencies and departments. There are bodies and institutions which have used technology in a positive manner. For example, the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal of Sri Lanka, with the advent of COVID, used digital hearings. There's a lot of digitization that is used at the Supreme Court. The Registrar of Companies, for example, has an EROC program in place. However, when we take very simple aspects, a husband who pays maintenance to his wife during the divorce proceedings and has to, for example, travel every month from Colombo to Badulla courts just to give 5,000 rupees, and he spends that amount traveling back and forth, and nobody says you can just deposit it online. So that aversion to change, as a result of which we lose out on human resources, on time, on energy. How do we overcome this?
Right. So Sonali, I would like to slightly disagree with you. We do have a certain resistance to change, and I think that is especially true of the government, because a lot of government things are based on procedures which have been set up, right? So for example, if you want to know in the government, if you go somewhere, how to stable your horse when you get to that place, there is a procedure for that, right? Because when these procedures set up, people used to go on horses. So yes, we are in some way that is true, and so some government institutions are still, I would say, stuck not in the 20th century but even in the 19th century. So I agree with that. But I do see a lot of change, and I do see especially a lot of younger government officials and even some very senior officials who are very much digital and they want to change. Of course, there are a lot of obstacles, because you have to change laws, you have to change regulations, you have to do so many things. So it is not so easy. So I would not blame people too much if they are to change. Now I want to say the opposite side. I think our citizens are very much for change. So citizens, if they understand that something can be done easily, they will do it. So people, I see anybody, they are on the phone. They talk to friends on the phone, right? The postal department has nothing to do because nobody writes letters anymore. So we are all sending messages on Facebook or WhatsApp or SMS or something else. And even e-commerce, I think, there's a lot of things happening where people use WhatsApp, use Instagram, use various technologies to sell things, and also people are now quite used to sending money by bank transfer, right? So even my wife said she was sending some, or she gave some money to somebody. I said, did you give cash? No, I just sent it to her bank, right? And so people are used to that, sending money to banks and getting money through money transfer. People are quite used to that. So I don't believe we are digitally averse, but at the same time, I think what Sonali, what you really mean is they may be risk averse. If you don't know what is the risk, you are scared. So I'll give you a good example. If you go to any supermarket, right, they will definitely accept credit cards and debit cards. But if you see the number of people who are paying, I see some people, I'm pretty sure by looking at the way he's dressed and so on, that he has a credit card in his pocket or in his wallet, but he pays cash. Why? Because maybe he doesn't trust the credit card, or trust paying by credit card, trust paying by debit card. So I think some of these things we need to tell people what is the actual risk and what is the limit of the risk. So another issue is that in Sri Lanka we don't have a limit to what the liability if you pay by credit card. In US there is a limit of $50 with some conditions if somebody just steals your card and uses it. Now we don't have such a thing here, so people are scared. So I think we need to look into the causes why people are resistant and address those causes.
Professor, with regard to your example, regarding the bank transfer, you're speaking as a professor of computing. The individual that I was talking about, who had to travel to Badulla courts to give maintenance to his ex-wife every single month, that was the office gardener.
Right.
So I think there is also this difference in the education background, the socio-economic background. All of these factors also come into play.
Right.
So when it comes to people who are of a low education background, socio-economic background, then there are more change of
They
us.
may not know. For example, they would be scared. So, for example, if I had to pay it, in a court, I would definitely ask my lawyer to put a motion to say, can I pay it into the bank? I'm
Because
pretty
you
sure,
are aware of your legal
right.
rights.
And I'm sure the judge will say yes.
Correct.
Whereas this guy, he did not know, and the lawyer probably did not think of putting a motion, and it ended up that he had to go every day, right? So I'm not saying it is correct, but yes, you are 100% right in the sense that if people are not aware, and not even cyber, right, of anything, I mean, people, when they go to court, they are dead scared to even ask the lawyer, is there a way of doing it?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And our systems need to be more people-centered, people-centric,
Right.
which they are not.
Right, and I mean, in fact, I would suggest, why didn't the judge or the court itself say, would you like to send the money online? So that's something we should educate our judges, our court staff, and so on, so that is given as a default method, rather than expecting people to pay cash.
Absolutely.
And I will tell you the other part. Now, this man went and paid 5,000 rupees to the court. How long do you think it took his ex-wife to actually get that money? She would have to probably come there, and they will say, and probably she would have had to spend 3 months before she got the money. I will guarantee you that.
All right, we're going for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
Are starting to run high.
Biggest rivalries in the history of sport.
Some as bad as they could.
Pride, fashion, everything at stake.
And every time they clash against each other, this is the scenario that we get.
Some as bad as they could.
Oh, pumped up. Emotions all around. There is some tension in the middle.
Some as bad as they could.
Big game. So much anticipation. Real confrontation in the middle.
Asia Cup, watch live on TV1.
මන්ද පෝෂණය කියන දේ අපේ රටට බලපාලා තියෙනවද?
මන්ද පෝෂණය රටට බලපාලා තියෙනවා. මේ පිළිබඳ දත්තක් තියෙනවා.
කාට හරි හිතෙන්න පුළුවන් මගේ හැම කැතයි මට ඕනේ සුදු පාට හැමක් කියලා.
අපි දේක ප්‍රතිඵලය විතරක් නොබලා එහි ආරක්ෂිත බව ගැනත් හිතන්න. එතනම අපි කියන්නේ ලස්සනට ඉන්න එපා කියලා. අපි කියන්නේ ආරක්ෂා සහිතව ලස්සනට ඉන්න.
පිළිකා රෝගියෙක් පිළිකා ප්‍රතිකර්ම වලදී පෝෂණය කියලා කියන්නේ මං හිතන්නේ වැදගත් සාධකයක් බවට පත් වෙනවා.
පිළිකාව කියන රෝගයත් එක්කම ඕනම කෙනෙක් මන්ද පෝෂණ තත්වයකට පත් වෙනවා. කන්න අපිට දැන් තියෙන සාමාන්‍ය තියෙන පිරිය වුණත් අඩු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ලොකු හේතු ගණනාවක් තියෙනවා. සාමාන්‍ය කෙනෙකුට වඩා මේ රෝගියාට ගන්න පුළුවන් ආහාර මට්ටමත් අඩු වෙනවා.
කතාවයි ක්‍රියාවයි අතර වෙනස ජාතික මෙහෙවර සතියේ දිනවල උදෑසන 9ට.
The country is clearly in a big fix. The question is, what is the fix? People tend to quickly focus on the economy, but I think that the problems are greater than the economy.
Though there are no gas queues or other queues, our economy has collapsed because of the collapse of the domestic production.
Actually, if you look at the rural side, the ordinary masses of the country, there are a lot of grave issues.
I think the government has done everything possible to ruin the future of even the rural community who otherwise almost live a life that is self-sufficient in their own regions. No?
Thinking about the people's grievances, if there is such a government, the government can give the priority to the farmers.
It's a bits and pieces government. That is how I would put it. I don't think it's a fully functional government. It's just a bits and pieces government of individuals who support the president, from various political backgrounds. I wouldn't say parties.
Face the Nation, Wednesday nights at 9:30 on TV1.
ආසියා ක්‍රිකට් අධිරාජ්‍යයේ අයිතියේ සටන ආසියා කුසලානය 2023 ශක්තිවන්ත ආසියානු ක්‍රිකට් ආදරවන්තයන්ගේ සංග්‍රාම භූමියේ දිස්නය විස්මය රස්නය නොඅඩුව විඳින්න අගෝස්තු 30 වෙනිදා සිට සැප්තැම්බර් 17 වෙනිදා දක්වා ආසියා කුසලානය සමග රැඳෙන්න නිල දේශීය සජීව විකාශය TV1 ඔස්සේ.
Welcome back. You're with the People's Platform. We're in conversation with Dr. Rasika Dayaratne and Professor Gihan Dias on shaping Sri Lanka's digital future. Professor Gihan Dias, I'd like to come to you. When we speak about shaping Sri Lanka's digital future, we need to talk about the role of the whistleblower in the digital domain. The Julian Assanges of the world, Pandora Papers, instances in which ill-gotten wealth was disclosed by hackers, hacktivists in public interest. How does this tie in with the cybersecurity space and social justice, Robin Hood-esque justice?
Okay, so I think currently this type of whistleblowing is not very prevalent here, and also I think the social environment is not really for a whistleblower. I think we are as a society more towards protecting the establishment rather than encouraging whistleblowers. So I think this is nothing to do with digital, this is a standard thing. So getting onto digital, I feel that digital does provide a good conduit, a good medium for people to make anonymous, I would say, accusations or disclosures or whatever. Now, having said that, I also believe that anonymous things are a bit, it's not a good thing to assume that any anonymous accusation is true. It is often based on people's personal grievances and this and that. So we have to be a bit careful of that. But it does allow any whistleblower to set up a Gmail account or a Facebook account or something like that and send their report, their disclosure, whatever, fairly anonymously. However, at the same time, I would like to caution people who are thinking of doing that there are ways of tracing back who has sent certain messages. So do not assume that whatever you are doing is completely anonymous. It may be possible for people to trace it back to you. So be aware of that. But in general, yes, there are anonymous methods, but if you are not careful, it's a problem. So I think that is what digital can do, but at the same time, we need to have institutional structures for dealing with such things. For example, if I accuse a high official of doing some bad thing, what's the institutional structure which is there to follow that through? Is it happening or does it get swept under the carpet?
No, absolutely. Institutions, processes are of paramount importance. Yes. Dr. Rasika, over the past few years, we've seen a phenomenal rise in cybercrime, extortion, sex crimes online. However, the systems in place are unable or ill-equipped to adequately and proactively resolve these issues. One, because of a lack of technical know-how, a lack of training and development, a lack of citizen awareness, and so many other reasons. What needs to be done?
The first thing is education. And it is not the theory part, but you have to have a very intelligent people, or not very intelligent, but see that these are the situations and there are threats. Also they should know that threats, and then they should know that there are vulnerabilities and how to protect against these malicious people. So that education is needed, and but I think that you cannot have like it is evolving thing, and there is other party that they are also getting more equipped with more technology, more knowledge and things. So it is a evolving process. So it is, you cannot teach and say that now you are safe, but we have to create the mindsets of people that always there is a threat, and you have to always educate and get to know that countermeasures. So that process is needed. So it is not like you get a certificate and okay, then now I know cybersecurity and I know how to protect it. That is not enough. So that is the other thing. Still, I think that most important thing is common sense. And you see that most of the cyber crimes in Sri Lanka, it's a lack of common sense. And if some people also believe that, some people ask that you send me this money, then I will send you that. So that's why should I believe that? I don't do that. And it is, other thing is, very educated people also falls into that trap.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a thing I think we want. When I think like a country, we need like if you see country like Singapore, there are so many things to educate the people. I think still there are victims, but I think we also have to do that. It is not like a single body or single person, and it's like everyone has to take the responsibility and do that.
Professor Gihan Dias, Sri Lanka is reactive when it comes to cyber crimes. Once the crime takes place, we try to sort of fix it or do damage control. How must we change our approach to a proactive one? And that's my first question. My second question is, who are the stakeholders who need to be given this task of continuously going about the training processes, the research and development processes, the equipping themselves with the knowledge processes?
Good. That's a very good question. So I will relate it in two stages. First, the corporates. So for example, if you take any, and when I say corporate, I also include the government in that. Big organizations, they run big IT systems, and there is a lot of value going through those systems. And those values need not necessarily be money, it could be just goods or something else. And they need to make sure these systems are secure. So this is one of the things which will be covered in the new act by identifying two things. One is the critical information infrastructure, which should be specifically secured. But even if you are not critical, any company, any organization which has information infrastructure, they should secure it. And how do we do that? There are security consulting companies, there are computer emergency response teams, so there are bodies which help you to do that. There are ISO standards like ISO 27001 and others which help you to be secure. So I think many of our corporates do that, because I know personally I've been working with some of them, the banks, the telcos and larger companies, they do that. But I think now we need to also move into the slightly not so huge big companies, but still they are large companies who maybe have not yet thought of IT security as a core business, where the chairman or the managing director says, I am making my money doing this product, why should I spend money on security, right? Why am I just wasting money on putting all these security things? So we should educate them and show that by not doing it, they will get caught. Caught in the sense they will be exposed to various harm. So that is there, and I don't believe things are too bad, especially in the corporate sector. So for example, the banking sector, all the banks are very much aware of these. most of the banks have actually got caught to things, so they have learned their lesson. Central bank is very strict now. They have put so many regulations and they are following up on that. And then these places like Visa, MasterCard, they are also very strict, because obviously if money is lost through them, it's partly they have to bear the risk. So I think the bigger corporates are okay. Now we need to move to the smaller corporates and educate them what needs to be done. As you said, it's a big process. So we are looking at going through various industry organizations, chambers of commerce and other bodies to try to reach these people, and also the professional bodies like the Computer Society of Sri Lanka and so on, to educate everybody, all the IT people and of course the senior management, on the importance of security.
All right. Dr. Rasika, we need to talk about the flip side. When laws are misused to suppress freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, the right to privacy, this is a dangerous sort of ground to tread on. How can we ensure that our laws are put in place in such a way that they serve the best interests of the people?
Very, very difficult question. So I think in this act also has a certain provisions. It is a mindset of the people, and because like you can say that acts are there, and so many times these acts were misused. And so I think like when you are drafting acts, you have to see that how this could be misused and what are the measures to prevent that. And also like earlier we talked about the whistleblowers, and whistleblowers, some countries they have protected the whistleblowers, and also whistleblowers have a duty also, like they have to take the steps before blowing the whistle to take. And I don't know how many of Sri Lankans are very much aware of that. So we should not blow the whistle, but there are certain other measures, intermediary measures. So that discussion is not in Sri Lanka yet, and we say that. And I also, to be honest, that I don't know the answer to that question. This is a misuse in this, and but whistleblowers have done certain good things in the past also. Certain people, not everyone.
Sure.
They reveal that all the secret practices of the government. And they said that like other people and organizations, they collect the data and misuse the data, share the data for various purposes. So in that respect, I think they have done a good job, but still in this country, we need to educate and understand and having the right mindset before blowing the whistle.
In conclusion, Professor Dias, what steps must the Sri Lankan state take to ensure that Sri Lanka could move towards shaping a digital future that is world class?
Yes. So this is nothing, I mean, it's not limited to security. And it is not limited to the state, because sometimes we as Sri Lankans have the idea that, oh, the government must do this, government must do this and government must do that. But really, government will do what people sort of ask it to do. When they see the people have a certain requirement, the government, the politicians will definitely go and do that. So we should not just wait for the government, we should proactively do what is needed. So security is important, but I think your question was much more, how do we become digital, right? To do that, we should understand what is the benefit of becoming digital. So obviously, if I want to do something and there is no benefit to me, I will not do it, right? So one of the things we should do is to show people that by going digital, by using these technologies, they can improve their life, right? And we must show the companies that, and remember when we say companies, we are not only talking of these huge big corporates. Let's talk of the small enterprises, right? Small enterprises are the backbone of the country, right? Most of the economic value is derived from small enterprises. Are they using digital? I think to a large extent, no. Right? Can they use digital? I think the answer is yes. So one of the things we need to do as a nation is to make sure that the government, the corporates, the small enterprises and the citizens understand what is the value of digital and what are the dangers of digital, and avoid the dangers and reap the value.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing your perspectives, Dr. Rasika Dayaratna and Professor Gihan Dias. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again on Tuesday with the Sinhala edition of the program. Have a safe weekend. Good night.
TV1. TV for life.
The emotions are starting to run high.
Biggest rivalries in the history of sport.
Some as bad as they could.
Pride, fashion, everything at stake.
And every time they clash against each other, this is the scenario that we get.
Some as bad as they could.
Pumped up. Emotions all around. There is some tension in the middle.
Some as bad as they could.
Big game, so much anticipation.
Real confrontation in the middle.
Asia Cup, watch live on TV1.
Stay